Chosen one, you never walked in wanting to outshine anyone. That was never your heart. You were the quiet one once, the one who learned to observe, not interrupt. You watched the loud ones grab attention. You watched the charming ones draw laughter. You stayed back, not out of weakness, but because you didn't yet know that what was stirring inside of you didn't need applause to be powerful. But now something has changed. You don't stand in the spotlight anymore. You are the spotlight, not because you asked for it, not because you pushed for it, not because you needed to be seen, but because your energy, your high-grounded, unbothered sexual energy has become so centered, so anchored, so undeniable that it draws everything toward it without effort. You don't chase connection. You don't try to dominate space. You don't perform, posture, or exaggerate your worth. You've simply become the kind of man whose presence no longer needs to be explained. And now others feel it. Not just the women, your male friends too. The ones who once stood taller, louder. The ones who were used to being the source of attention. The ones who relied on noise to be relevant. They don't understand how you do it. They see you stand still, and yet people gather around you. They see you say little, and yet women hear you more clearly than anyone else. They see your quiet confidence, and it burns something in them they don't want to name. Because the truth is, they see the shift. They feel it. You used to be one of them, one of the ones looking to be seen. Now you are the one people see, even when you're not trying. And it bothers them. They joke about it. They brush it off. They call you lucky. But underneath it all is a discomfort they haven't addressed. You've become what they still pretend to be. And it's not about appearance. It's not about who's stronger or taller or funnier. It's about energy. Your high sexual energy is no longer leaky or chaotic. It no longer scans the room for approval. It no longer looks for targets. It simply exists within you now like a current too strong to ignore. And others feel it, not because you show it, but because you don't hide it anymore. You've become the man who radiates presence without needing attention. And that, chosen one, is the most dangerous kind of light, because it cannot be turned off. And those who once stood beside you as equals, some of them feel smaller now, not because you made them small, but because your presence is no longer dimmed to protect their comfort. You didn't ask for the spotlight. You just remembered who you were without shame. And in that remembrance, you became a light they can't stand beside without feeling the truth of their own shadows. Chosen one, you've become the kind of man whose very field speaks on his behalf. Before you speak, she feels you. Before you smile, she notices. Before you even know she's watching, she already is. And this is what makes them nervous. Not just the women, your friends too. They notice how the room shifts around you. They feel the difference between how she looks at you and how she looks at them. They won't say it out loud. They'll pretend they didn't notice. But deep inside, they felt the drop. That moment when you walked in and didn't need to announce your arrival. Your energy did it for you. It wasn't cologne. It wasn't your clothes. It was the truth humming beneath your skin, the quiet thunder that no longer hides behind humor or small talk or overdone confidence. And they can't copy it, because this isn't about tactics. This isn't about playing the game better. This is about being untouchably real while they're still busy rehearsing who they need to be to win attention. They don't understand how your stillness makes her lean in. They don't understand how your slowness feels more powerful than their speed. They don't understand why the less you say, the more she remembers. And that misunderstanding turns to tension. They don't just envy your attention, they envy your ease, because they're still working for it. And you're just breathing, and people are drawn in like your aura carries gravity. Your high sexual energy isn't chaotic anymore. It's not thirst. It's depth. It's calm. It's the rare and terrifying realization that some men don't have to pursue women to be desired. They simply have to exist near them. That, chosen one, is the truth your friends can feel now. Their laughter has changed. Their jokes about your luck carry a sharpness now. Their questions come coated in doubt, because they feel that what you've tapped into isn't surface, it's sourced. You didn't just get noticed, you became noticeable, without asking for it, without forcing it, without even trying. Because when a man walks in full integrity, when his energy is aligned, contained, magnetic, it doesn't matter what room he's in. He is the room, and they feel it now, even if they can't say it, even if they won't. They feel your energy, and they know the truth. Your aura speaks louder than their noise ever could. And that, chosen one, is why they're jealous. Not because you took anything from them, but because you've reminded them what they never cultivated in themselves: real presence. Chosen one, something subtle has begun to shift. You feel it. You don't always name it, but you feel it. The laughs don't land like they used to. The friendly slaps on the shoulder feel more hollow. The energy around you that once flowed with ease is now lined with sharpness, tension, and something quiet, but unmistakable: frustration. Not because of what you've done, but because of what you've become. They say all the right things. They act like it's all love. But beneath their approval lives a tightening, a discomfort, a silent measuring stick that they now carry every time you walk into a space. You were once one of them. You played the same game. You all learned to posture, to overspeak, to overtry. You joked about who got the number, who got the look, who got the win. But now, you don't play anymore. You don't rush to entertain. You don't laugh to fit in. You don't try to outshine or outtalk. You simply exist, anchored, slow, magnetic, and the women feel it first. You say less, but they lean toward you. You don't reach, but they reach back. You're not playing anymore, but you're still winning. And that's what breaks the unspoken code among your brothers. Because their whole image of power was built on effort. And now you're standing there, effortless and undeniable. She smiles at you differently, not with flirtation, with depth. She touches your arm when she speaks. She glances at you when someone else is talking. She listens to your silence more than their words. And they notice. They try to laugh it off, but the laughs are brittle now. They say he's lucky, but mean he's different now. They say he's glowing, but mean he's no longer one of us. And that, chosen one, is what unsettles them most, because it isn't what you're doing. It's what they can no longer deny. You've stepped into a kind of presence they haven't even begun to explore. Their smiles carry tension now, because they're watching someone rise without effort. They're watching women move toward a man who doesn't chase. They're watching attention follow a man who doesn't perform. And all of their strategies, the talking, the flexing, the flirting, suddenly feel small next to your quiet. Their frustration isn't with you. It's with the reflection. You've become a mirror that doesn't flatter. You reveal what's missing, not with judgment, but by contrast. You hold up a truth that's hard to ignore. Real power doesn't ask to be seen. It simply stands, breathes, anchors. And that, chosen one, is why their smiles now come with tension, because your glow reminds them they've been chasing what you've become. Chosen one, most men have been taught to bury their hunger for meaning beneath surface victories. They chase validation, they chase numbers, they chase women, but never themselves. They hide behind game, behind sarcasm, behind masks of confidence that shatter under silence. And they tell themselves it's enough, that being seen is the same as being known. But then they meet you again, not the you they remember, but the man you've become. And something in their chest tenses. Because you didn't just get better at the game. You left the arena entirely. You stopped chasing numbers. You stopped needing laughs. You stopped performing for rooms full of people who don't even see you. You began choosing presence over performance. And now, women feel it. Deeply. They listen when you speak. They lean into your silence. They remember your name before you offer it twice. And your friends? They pretend it doesn't matter. They pretend they don't care that you're different. But your difference exposes something inside them. The ache they've been ignoring. The longing. The hunger. You remind them of the power they abandoned in exchange for approval. Because you're not louder now. You're deeper. You're not chasing more. You're anchoring better. You walk in a room and suddenly every trick they learned feels unnecessary. And worse, ineffective. Because women aren't drawn to you because you're trying. They're drawn because you've become real. And realness is devastating to those who have built an entire identity on being impressive. That's why the tension lives in the room when you arrive. You awaken what they pretend doesn't matter. They've worked so hard to suppress the part of them that longs to be calm, centered, chosen without chasing. But when you walk in, you are proof that it exists. You are living evidence that there is a way to be powerful without being performative. And they don't know what to do with that. So they joke, they downplay, they roll their eyes at the way women turn to look. But they feel it. They feel the difference. Because you're no longer trying to be admired. You're embodying admiration without asking for it. And that, chosen one, awakens the part of them that wonders what it would be like to stop performing too. But until they're ready, they will keep pretending it doesn't matter, while you keep being the living, breathing contradiction to everything they thought was required to be magnetic. You're not threatening their confidence. You're threatening their illusion. And illusions always tremble in the presence of what's true. Chosen one, you don't have to raise your voice anymore. You don't have to make a scene, dress the loudest, or speak over others to be felt. When you step into a room, something happens, and it's not thunder or fireworks. It's a shift in the atmosphere. The temperature changes, the volume dips, people begin to move differently, even if they don't realize why. You don't enter with noise, you bring weight. And that weight is not arrogance, it is anchored peace. You've become so calm, so present that the room starts orbiting around your silence instead of their shouting. And they feel it. Your male friends, especially the ones used to being the loudest, the ones who used to be the center, feel it more than anyone. They were used to being noticed. They were used to getting the glances, the laughs, the lingering touches. But now she's looking at you. Not because you tried, not because you flirted, but because you've become a man whose energy pulls people in like gravity, and they don't know how to compete with something they can't even name. It's not your jokes. It's not your outfit. It's not your game. It's the field around your body that speaks for you before you open your mouth. And while you sit calm, still, and centered, they begin to feel invisible. They talk louder. They interrupt. They try harder to make her laugh. But her attention keeps drifting. Not to your words, but to your stillness. Because you are no longer trying to be chosen. You've become a place she can rest inside. And that rest, that unshakable masculine stillness, outshines all their noise. They see it, they feel it, they won't name it, but it burns in them. Because they know deep down that what you're radiating isn't luck, it's mastery. Mastery over your own body, mastery over your breath, mastery over your hunger. You are no longer leaking energy to be noticed. You are holding it like fire in your chest, and it warms the space around you. It pulls her in without intention. It settles her nervous system while they spike hers with pressure and expectations. And they hate that. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've done everything right without trying. They feel invisible now, not because they're less, but because you've stopped shrinking for their comfort. You've become undeniable, and next to you, their noise no longer shines. It just sounds like what it is. Desperation, wearing confidence like a costume. They miss when you were loud. They miss when you were uncertain. They miss when they didn't feel like the background of a room you now command without force. That's what your calm has done, chosen one. It has revealed what's real, and it has silenced what used to work when there was no presence to stand beside. Chosen one, there's a moment they don't speak of, but it's burned into their memory. That moment when she stepped into the room, eyes dancing, smile alive, and before they could adjust their posture, before they could deliver their line, she looked at you first. Not out of politeness, not because you called her over, but because her instinct pulled her eyes to you. And that, they noticed. Even if they laughed it off, even if they acted like they didn't care, they noticed. Because men know. We know who gets the first look. We know who the energy moves toward. And when it moves without effort, when it drifts to the one who didn't ask for it, something primal shifts in the room. You didn't smile first. You didn't move toward her. You didn't play. You stayed still. And she found you anyway. Because your energy no longer seeks, it receives, it welcomes. And when a woman locks eyes with a man like that, her body remembers something older than memory, that she is safest when desire does not chase but simply waits and holds. That's what she saw in you, and they saw it in her eyes. She wasn't scanning the room, she was answering a signal. And you were the signal. So now they make their jokes, they tease you, they ask, what's your secret? But the truth is, they already know. You've tapped into something they've avoided. The truth that you don't need lines or speed or strategy when your very presence has become a sanctuary. Because your high sexual energy isn't just power anymore. It's peace. It's clarity. It's trust. You've become the kind of man who is chosen without reaching. And that kind of man doesn't fight for the first glance. He receives it like a sunrise through an open window. They notice, and it unsettles them, because deep down, they want it too. They want to be the one who draws without chasing, who attracts without performing, who is chosen without pretending. But they're still moving too fast, still talking too much, still trying to manufacture what you've become. So when she looks at you first, it's not just attraction, it's a recognition, and they feel it in their gut, not because you won something, but because you stopped trying to win and became the prize without knowing it. Chosen one, there was a time their laughter felt like celebration. When you spoke, they laughed with you. When you failed, they lifted you. When you doubted yourself, they offered their shoulders. You were brothers in spirit, in struggle, in youth. But that time has passed, not because you turned away from them, but because you grew into something they never expected you to become. You didn't get louder, you got deeper. You didn't get stronger, you got still. You didn't become better than them, you just stopped needing to prove anything at all. And that's what changed their laughter. Because now when you speak, their laughs land differently. There's a sting behind their smiles, a twitch in the corner of their mouth when they try to seem happy for you. The warmth has cooled into something else, not quite hatred, not quite love, just discomfort dressed as a joke. They tease you harder now. They question your confidence more often. They point out your calm like it's arrogance. They joke about how lucky you are with women. But what they're really trying to say is this: how did he become the one we can't explain anymore? Because while they kept reaching, you began returning. While they learned tricks, you learned stillness. While they memorized lines, you memorized your breath. And now that breath, that stillness, that quiet rhythm in your chest, it disarms people. Especially her. She doesn't laugh the loudest at their jokes anymore. She doesn't lean into their clever lines. She keeps looking toward you, not because you're performing, but because you're not. And your friends feel it. Even if they won't say it, even if they won't name it, they feel the shift, the unspoken hierarchy forming in real time. Not one based on power, but on presence. You've become the man they never saw coming, the one who doesn't play the game, yet keeps winning its rewards. And that is the kind of power that cannot be faked. So their laughter sharpens, not because they hate you, but because you remind them of what they could be if they stopped chasing applause. They laugh to cut, to level, to soften the sting of your rise. They laugh because it's easier than admitting that you've left the old version of masculinity behind. You've stopped needing to be seen, and because of that, you're now all they can see. And that truth, chosen one, is too heavy for some to carry quietly. So they mask it in noise, in jokes, in laughter. But you feel it. You always have. Because you've learned to listen deeper than words. And beneath their laughter now, you hear the sound of a man watching his old reflection disappear. Chosen one, they used to look at you and see themselves. You were the one they could laugh with, plot with, compare with. You were learning as they learned, fumbling as they fumbled. But something happened when you stepped into your energy. You didn't just grow. You transcended. And the more rooted you became in your truth, the more you turned from peer into mirror. Now, when they look at you, they don't see a brother in arms. They see a reminder, a reflection of what they haven't yet faced. A glimpse into what's possible, but only through surrender, not strategy. And that makes them uncomfortable, because mirrors don't lie, they don't flatter, they don't soften, they show. And what your presence shows now is what happens when a man stops performing and starts embodying. They see it in your eyes. You no longer seek. You no longer try to impress. You no longer carry the hunger of a man begging the world to see him. You see yourself now, and so others see you more clearly than ever. That clarity becomes reflection, and they avoid it. They avoid your gaze not because it's harsh, but because it's true. It reminds them of what they pretend not to care about. The woman who glanced at you first. The moment she melted into your quiet presence. The way she drifted toward your orbit before they even had a chance to try. You weren't louder. You weren't richer. You weren't more clever. You were simply honest and present and whole. And now, Your friends are left grappling with a truth that cannot be argued. All their noise cannot compete with a man who has nothing to prove. So they avoid the mirror, they mock it, they pretend not to see what's there, because it's easier to joke than to unravel. It's easier to deflect than to reflect. But no matter how much they joke, how much they posture, how much they try to regain what they think they lost, they can't unsee what your presence reveals. You are no longer a version of them. You are a version of what they could be, if they were brave enough to strip away the costume and face their own soul. And that makes you the most dangerous thing in the room. A man who has become his own source. A man who is no longer trying to win women because he already won himself. They don't fear losing to you, chosen one. They fear becoming like you because it would cost them their masks. And few are ready for that kind of mirror. Chosen one, you've entered a realm where not everyone can follow. Not because you've locked any doors behind you, but because they refuse to let go of the keys that no longer fit. And this is the moment when what once sounded like brotherhood starts to shift its tone. The advice they used to give from camaraderie now starts to drip with something colder, more measured, more unsure. Their encouragement has started to bend at the edges. Their advice carries a taste of sabotage, veiled in concern. They tell you not to get too confident. They tell you to tone it down. They say, don't scare her off, as if your presence were a weapon. They remind you of your flaws, not as jokes, but as little anchors they hope will weigh you down just enough to make them feel level again. You hear it differently now, not because you've become suspicious, but because you've become clear. And in your clarity, you hear the fear behind their voices. You see the unease in their posture when she turns toward you. You see how their praise pauses just long enough to slip a warning in, just long enough to remind you not to outgrow them too fast. Because they feel it. They feel that you're walking a path now that doesn't ask for their approval. You're not consulting them for validation. You're not seeking permission. You're not leaning into their maps. Because you found your own compass, and they don't know what to do with that. So they mask their discomfort in advice. They try to tame your energy by calling it too much. They try to box your masculinity by saying it's intimidating. They try to explain away her attention by suggesting it's accidental or temporary. But what they're really saying is, please don't grow beyond the version of you I'm comfortable with. Because if you do, if you keep rising the way you've begun, you'll leave behind more than noise. You'll leave behind a structure of male approval that only exists as long as you play by the same unspoken rules. But you're not playing anymore. You've stopped asking for advice from men who haven't walked where you're going. You've stopped waiting for their validation. You've realized their suggestions were built on their own insecurities, not your truth. And now, when they speak, you listen gently, but you no longer absorb what isn't yours. Because you know now, some men don't want you to lose. They just don't want you to win without needing them. And that kind of independence, the kind that radiates from your high sexual energy, your anchored spirit, your quiet self-respect, that kind of independence exposes what they never built inside themselves. You've become a walking contradiction to their survival strategy. You embody a new kind of strength, one they can't lead, predict, or contain. And so their advice begins to bite. But you smile anyway, not because it doesn't sting, but because you've outgrown the need to pretend that every voice deserves a seat in your journey. You are not rude. You are not rebellious. You are simply becoming a man who chooses his counsel wisely. Because presence, chosen one, requires protection. And yours is now too valuable to be shaped by men still afraid of their own power. Chosen one, let this truth settle in your bones. You no longer represent possibility to the room. You represent proof. Proof that you don't need to chase to be wanted. Proof that silence can speak louder than charisma. Proof that being whole inside makes you magnetic outside. And that proof disrupts everything. Your friends used to live in the illusion that more effort meant more results. That whoever spoke loudest, tried hardest, flexed widest, would be the one she chose. They were taught to move faster, be wittier, dominate the space. And for a while it worked. Until you stopped moving and started vibrating. You no longer compete, you no longer perform. You reside in your body like a man who doesn't rent space in anyone else's validation. And because of that, you pull what others chase. She notices it. She doesn't even know why she can't stop watching you from across the room. She doesn't understand how your calm makes her heart race more than their attention ever did. But she feels it. Your friends feel it too. They try harder now, louder, sharper, flashier, and it still doesn't work because energy wins. Not in volume, not in applause, in effect. And you, chosen one, have become undeniably effective without being aggressive. You move like the room belongs to you, but without arrogance. You speak like you've already been heard, even if no one is talking. You breathe like you know exactly who you are, and that breath alone changes the air around you. They can't mimic it, because it's not a trick. It's a truth you bled for, prayed for, earned in silence. You've become proof that you don't have to break yourself to be seen. That women choose presence over performance. That magnetism isn't built, it's remembered. And now, no matter what they say, what they pretend not to feel, what they act like they don't see, they know. They know your energy walks ahead of you like a shadow that speaks before your mouth does. They know you are now the man who shifts everything without lifting a finger. And that knowing will haunt them because they once knew you before you remembered your power. And now that you have, you've become untouchable. Not because you're distant, but because you no longer beg for belonging. You belong to yourself now. And in a world built on effort, you've proven that energy, pure, anchored, sacred masculine energy, is the final word. This is the beauty of divine timing. It doesn't just arrive, it accelerates. What you thought would take years may happen in weeks. What you thought would trickle may pour. This is not because you finally became worthy. It is because you finally became aligned. And alignment brings rhythm. You are no longer moving against time. You are dancing with it. This month, you'll feel it in strange ways. People will begin to speak about things you were just thinking. Opportunities will appear that align with plans you hadn't even spoken aloud. You will move with clarity in spaces where you used to hesitate. You'll walk into rooms and feel like they were waiting for you, not in ego, but in spirit. That's how divine timing feels. It's not forced, it's familiar. And here's what's most important. Don't panic when the pace quickens. Triple blessings don't always come with a pause. They come with momentum. Things will align suddenly. Invitations will arrive swiftly. You may feel stretched, but know this: God does not rush what He has not fortified. You are being stretched because you can handle the stretch. You are being accelerated because you are ready to hold what's moving fast. There may be moments when your logical mind tells you to slow down, to question the open door, to delay your response, but your spirit will know. Trust your spirit. It has walked this path in silence long before the manifestation came. Your spirit recognizes divine timing before your thoughts catch up. Follow that pull, that whisper, that nudge. That's the rhythm of God, leading you into overflow. This month is not about figuring everything out. It's about moving when it's time. And it is time. No more waiting for confirmation from the outside. You've already been prepared. The signs have already been given. The door is already open. And heaven is already watching, ready to multiply everything you step into with faith. Chosen one, divine timing doesn't ask for permission. It asks for obedience. It asks for courage. It asks for the version of you who is not afraid to walk through fast-moving waters. You are that version now. Not because you have everything planned, but because you trust the one who does. So step into alignment, move with confidence, and let time serve you. This is not just your month of blessing. It is your appointed moment in eternity. Everything before this was preparation. Everything after this will be overflow. The calendar cannot contain what God is unfolding. You are now on heaven's clock, and it's running right on time. Chosen one, you are now walking in a light you did not force into existence. You did not manufacture this visibility. It is not the result of self-promotion, vanity, or chasing attention. This visibility is the byproduct of authentic presence. For years, you labored in silence, honored your growth in private, and mastered your energy when no one applauded. Now, like the breaking of a new day, your presence has become impossible to ignore. But understand this deeply. You were not elevated for the sake of applause. You were not given this visibility to be consumed or praised. You were raised up because you are now trusted. Heaven does not promote popularity. Heaven promotes purpose. And now that your frequency has matured, now that your power no longer leaks in all directions, God has permitted the eyes of others to find you. Not so they can admire you, but so they can be taught, restored, activated by your example.